everybody. I'm Beatty Reynolds, and welcome again, my friends, to the Ask Beatty show. And the Beatles are not the only one these days who are needing and who are wanting and who actually have the courage to reach out and ask for help. You know, I've been in my office on the Upper West Side here in New York City. I haven't been to the Progressive Radio Network studio. I can hardly believe it. Since March of 2020. And I was thinking about how it really does take so much courage for people to reach out and ask for help, particularly about their mental health issues. I mean, we ask help about everything in our lives. If we want help with purchasing a computer or a car, and yet people are still so very reluctant when it comes to their mental health. And yet it is so important. And as I've been telling you for the past 330 Ask Beatty shows, is that life's challenges are such that we really don't need to navigate all of the ups and downs that we all go through in our lives alone. And I continue to look at the statistics here in the United States. 1 in 3 Americans are suffering from depression. 40 million Americans are suffering from a wide variety of anxiety disorders. And the suicide rates, particularly for young adults, that number is really going up. In fact, it's translating into 1 in 4 young adults are struggling with suicidal thoughts. And of course, we are still dealing, and we're probably going to be dealing with the impact of the virus for quite some time. Our jobs, our health. Every other day, I'm hearing of people, of colleagues, of friends who are actually contracted. People who made the decision to get the vaccine. They too, particularly here in New York and around the country, are having difficulties even accessing the vaccine. People are so concerned. Am I going to be able to pay my rent, to buy food, basic things that so many of us that we typically did not have to worry about. Businesses are closing. And in fact, I was reading today in the New York Times, over 50% of people are now working remotely. And it may have felt really okay in the beginning, but now people are feeling more and more disconnected and lonely and anxious, so they have quite a ways to go before we're going to be able to re-equilibrate to the new normal. And people still are exercising less and eating more. So the real question, of course, is, and I ask you this every single week here on the Ask Beatty show, we need to be very, very aware of the things that we absolutely cannot control, and yet at the same time be so cognizant of all of the different things that we can do every single day. Things that will definitely improve the quality of our lives and the quality of our relationships. And of course, Gary Null talks about this every day, the plant-based diets, the fruits, the vegetables, the grains, the nuts, good supplements and vitamins, and making sure, of course, that we are exercising. And of course, the studies on exercise and weight training, they are so clear. They are some of the best antidepressants on the market today, and making sure that we are interacting and socializing, even though it may be on Zoom, as much as possible. And of course, the importance of getting at least 8 hours a night of really good, solid sleep, and making sure if we're looking at the people in our lives that we have supportive people. and eliminating toxins. Of course, Gary Null and others talk about chemical toxins. And when I talk about toxins, I typically talk about toxic people and making sure, and that means even if it's friends and family, that we develop a no toxic people policy in our lives, because if we allow it, toxic people, they are going to have an incredibly, this, negative effect on us emotionally and psychologically and physically as well. And if you're feeling down like so many people are these days, positive visualization is wonderful. Dancing and listening to music. Some people really enjoy herbal teas. People who do not have close relationships in their lives find it a great, great benefit to journal every day and track their feelings of how they're feeling. And of course, after we are aware of our feelings and what we would like and our hopes and our dreams, then of course it's important to figure out, with or without help, how we are going to make our dreams and our goals come true and make them a reality. So the thing is that we all, as I say, we all go through so many ups and downs in our lives. And I'm really hoping that during the last several years that I have really been able to convince you that reaching out and asking for help, that it is not a weakness, but that it is a real strength. And having partnerships means so much for all of us. You look at athletes and they have their teams and they have their coaches, and yet somehow, we were taught, most of us as young children, that we needed to deal with our issues on our own. And that is a fallacy, which is one of the primary reasons why I began doing call-in counseling radio talk shows many years ago. And what I'm hoping, and what I've actually been hoping for, is that I would be able to encourage you, my faithful listeners, to be able to not only email me and text me with a variety of different questions and concerns and things that you may be struggling with, but to also call me. And what happened last week is that I sent out a number of emails and put on social media that I was planning to spend a good portion of the time on the Ask Beatty show beginning today, dealing with your problems and dealing with your issues. And I actually received a number of letters, and I'm going to read you the first letter actually happens to be from Alice. And by the way, the call-in number, you can call me now. The show is live. The call-in number is 888-874-4888. So I received this email from Alice a couple of days ago, and she said that she was a little shy about calling live on the show. And would I please read her letter and answer her questions about what she can do under the current circumstances that she is trying to deal with. So this is what Alice wrote. Dear Beatty, I am 55 years old. I am divorced and I have suffered from depression for most of my life. I have been on a lot of medication, which has never really helped me. I was sexually and physically abused as a child, and although I've had a lot of therapy, I can't seem to get over my past. I always seem to choose the wrong men and wonder if I can ever be happy. Can you help me? Well, Alice, first of all, I want to thank you for reaching out. And it does take a lot of courage to reach out especially to a stranger. But I wanted you all to know that not only do I host the Ask Beatty show here on the Progressive Radio Network, and as many of you know, I've been in national radio and television now for many, many years, close to 30 years. I am a licensed psychotherapist and sex therapist. I have a master's degree in clinical social work from McGill University in Montreal and postgraduate specialization in marriage and family therapy and sexual dysfunction. And this is really, really important for you to know that when you are choosing a therapist, you want to make sure that the person has the credentials, has the training, and has the experience, because not all therapists are the same. So I am now going to respond to Alice, and Alice, I know that you are listening. So my first question, and this is something I think often that therapists really don't think about, but for me, the first question is whether or not, Alice, whether or not you have actually had a complete physical, because sometimes there are things that are going on in our body, and if they are not causing the depression or the anxiety, they are contributing to the anxiety and depression and other different types of psychiatric and emotional problems. For example, you may have some thyroid issues or low blood sugar or other possible physical conditions that have actually yet to be diagnosed that may be, again, not causing your depression, but contributing to the depression. So what I would suggest that you do is that you schedule a physical, an annual physical, and of course we should all have annual physical examinations every single year, just to make sure to have your blood work done and just to make sure that there is nothing going on physically that could be explaining, even in part, the levels of depression. And you've said that you've been very, very depressed, that you've been experiencing for many, many, many years. Secondly, I think that we all need to be honest and take a look at our diet. What are we eating? I mean, there are a lot of studies that show that inflammation can really not only cause but contribute to a variety of different problems. And so again, you want to make sure that you are exercising. You want to absolutely make sure that your diet is as good as it can possibly be. And so at least you're being very, very systematic in ruling out possible contributing problems. What is your sleep like? Are you sleeping? Because I don't know about you, that if I don't have sufficient sleep, I feel groggy, I feel down, I feel anxious. So again, these are all some very basic, practical things that you need to ask yourself. And of course, alcohol and drugs. And a lot of people want to self-medicate with alcohol. And I'm sure that many of you know that alcohol happens to be a depressant. So that if you are depressed and you are going to be, at least in your mind, self-medicating with alcohol, you are making your depression worse. So again, I want you to rule out any physical issues, looking at your diet, looking at exercise, looking at your sleep, and also looking at any prescription medications and over-the-counter medications that may be contributing to your mood. So that is your homework. The next question that I have for you, Alice, is what kind of therapy have you had? There are a lot of therapists, and when I think about people who contact me for therapy, I have a private practice here in New York City on the Upper West Side and also in East Hampton. And it is so strange to me that many people talk about their 45-minute sessions or their 50-minute sessions. And of course, I grew up in Canada and I was educated in Canada and I did all of my training in Canada. And for me, an hour still is 60 minutes. I know that a lot of things have changed in this world, but an hour is 60 minutes. And I think that 45-minute sessions are absolutely absurd. But I am curious, not only the amount of time that you spent in therapy and how long your therapeutic sessions were, but what kind of therapy did you have? Because a lot of people believe that if you just change your mind and change your attitude and change your behavior today, that you are going to be able to then move forward and really not have to go back and deal with your past. And all I can tell you, if there was a shortcut, if there was a way to not have to go back and emotionally talk about and emotionally work through as best as we possibly can what did and didn't happen in our past, including disappointing relationships, including sexual and physical abuse, believe me, I would have figured this out a long time ago, because people who know me in my personal life will attest to the fact that I'm probably one of the most impatient people that you would ever want to know. I want it now. And yet, as a therapist, I have learned that we cannot move forward unless we go back and deal with the traumas of our past. Is it fun? Absolutely not. But one of the things that happens, and this does not need to take years and years, but I certainly would let you know that for me and the way I practice as a psychotherapist, you need to go back to your family of origin. And what happens is through this process, you maybe for the first time, you're going to get clarity. You are going to get clarity about what happened and what didn't happen and why you've been feeling the way you've been feeling. And you would learn that this is not your fault, and that there is no need to beat yourself up because you have tried with therapy and medication, and I'm sure with all kinds of other things to try to finally work through your depression. And there are therapists who would probably disagree with me, but I have treated thousands of people who've been sexually abused and physically abused, and all I can tell you is that this process, it really does work. And that is another thing about you that I want you to know about me, is that I am very bottom line. I have absolutely no use for psychobabble. I have no use for theory that does not work in the real world. And the reality, of course, my friends, is that even though we can't change our history, we can't change what happened and didn't happen, but that together we can begin, after emotionally working through again as best as one can. And that does not mean forgetting. And it also does not mean forgiving unless that is something that you choose to do. And forgetting and forgiving is not part of what needs to happen for the majority of people to be able to move forward in their lives. And all I can tell you is that when you go through that process, when all of you go through that process, people who have had and suffered from a variety of different disappointments and traumas in their life, one of the best things that happens is that you are finally able to actually live in the moment, in the present, without having one foot in the past and one foot in the present. And if you were listening to the beginning of the show, and I know that you were, Alice, that you can do many things today. Of course, getting a good therapist and going through this process. But there are many things that we can all do every single day, including exercise and diet and positive visualization and getting rid of the toxic chemicals and the toxic people in our lives that make us crazy, that will all help you to move forward in positive and constructive ways. Now, is this going to happen in a week? No, it is not going to happen in a week. But I think that it's a brand new year, and I really appreciate the fact that you emailed me and that you have the courage, because you've certainly tried in many ways over the years, that you had the courage to get yet another opinion. And I'm really hoping that you are going to follow through with my recommendations. Of course, if I can be helpful, you can always reach me through the Progressive Radio Network studio, and you can always go to my beattycone.com website. So I hope that this has been really something that's helpful for you, and that you will take my good advice and that you will find a really good therapist and work through these issues so that you then are going to be able to move forward with men. And that is a subject, of course, that I talk about a lot. And as many of you know, I did research with 450 people in the Boston and Providence and Connecticut area. And I developed a 10-step formula, which culminated in my book, For Better, For Worse, Forever, Discover the Path to Lasting Love, which teaches all of us exactly how to assess who's right for you and who's wrong for you before committing to any serious relationship. And of course, since most of us never received any relationship education when we were growing up, I actually wrote the book for my daughter, and thousands and thousands of people around the world have used the formula successfully. And you know, the great thing about the formula is it educates, it empowers us, and most important, it keeps us safe. But having the formula and having the book in itself is not sufficient. So I have actually defined 3 things that we all need to do if we're ever going to find a healthy relationship, and if we are never going to make a mistake in love again. So this goes back to you, Alice. It goes back to each of us needing to be in a really good place emotionally and psychologically and psychiatrically, and be and serious with help to work through our traumas, usually beginning from our own families of origin, because we need to be okay. And as I used to tell my daughter Jordana when she was a little girl, that the relationship needs to be the icing on the cake. We need to be the cake. We need to be solid, and we need to be the foundation. And then, of course, number two, we all need to learn the ingredients that go into a successful relationship. And when you look at the divorce statistics, it looks like people, regardless of how many times they have been married, have still not learned what these ingredients are. And, you know, it always does. Every time I read these statistics, it's very sobering and very disappointing. I mean, the divorce rate for first marriages is 48%. For second marriages, it's 67%, and 74% of couples who are marrying for the third time end up in front of a judge, or maybe these days on Zoom, in a divorce court. So again, there is a process that we all need to go through if we are ever hoping to find and maintain and sustain a healthy relationship. And the first thing that has to happen, it has to begin with us. So you let me know, Alice, what you think about my advice, and I do hope that you are going to keep in touch. Well, we have, and I'm really excited about this because I am hoping to be able to take more and more live calls here on the Ask Beatty show. Well, we have Jason on the phone, and I am looking in the chat room. There is a lack of sex in his marriage. So, hi, Jason. Welcome to the Ask Beatty show. How can I help?
Hi, Beatty. Hi. Well, I actually, you said there's a lot of sex in my marriage. Well, I've been married for about 10 years. I have 2 children, 5 and 7. And the fact is my wife is very little interested in sex.
How little is she interested in sex?
Very little. I mean, 2 or 3 times a year, literally. And
wow.
It's just, you know, it's been an abrupt change, and I love her very much. I love my children. We did have a good sex life for the first few years of our marriage. It's changed since we've had the kids. And to add to this, where I work, I've become attracted to a particular person at work, and she's attracted to me, and we haven't done anything, but we've talked, and I'm thinking about having an affair, and I'm really at loose ends here, and I hope you can help me out on this. I'm really pretty upset about the whole situation.
Well, I can understand, and I really, really appreciate your call, Jason. And if you've heard me over the years, it takes a lot of courage for people to give themselves permission and ask, and, you know, really ask for help and reach out and ask for help. So let me ask you a couple of questions. First of all, have you sat down with your wife in the past couple of years to have a really honest conversation without the television on and without the computer on and without the children yelling, "Mommy, Daddy, I need your attention," to really address the fact that you are, and understandably so, very upset about the fact that you virtually don't have a sex life?
Well, I can't say we really formally sat down in any sort of serious way. I've channeled a lot of my energy into work and being with the kids, and my wife isn't really, she keeps very busy too, but she's not one who really talks about things very readily. But I would certainly like to do that very much, and because again, I do love her very much, but I'm very conflicted. So no, we haven't really sat down and talked in the way that I would really like to.
Well, let me just say, Jason, that you're not alone, especially when it comes to dicey subjects. I think that the majority of couples find ways to deny and avoid and prioritize work and the children and exercise and everything else other than focusing on the reality of what it is and what it may not be that is working out in your relationship. And that is definitely the first thing I would do. I would not, however, tell her that you've met somebody and that you're thinking of having an affair. I mean, that would probably be the end of the conversation, and it could very well really rupture your marriage in ways that that is the last thing that you need to do. But what I would say, and I think that, you know, it's a dicey topic, and obviously both of you have avoided sitting down and talking about all of this. You say that you've, you know, focused more on work, and I'm sure on your children. But you have, and I'm not blaming you for this, but, you know, you have actually agreed to the dynamic so far up to this point, not after today, hopefully, that you would not talk about and that you would not deal with this issue of basically having a sexless marriage. So hopefully the fact that you've called means that you are now willing to honestly address this issue. Now, is that true? You are ready to do something now?
No, I am. I would gently approach the issue. I know that it would probably be welcome on her part as well. I'm willing certainly to take the leadership on it, and I would do that. I would do that. I wonder, would you recommend any particular way of approaching or how to go about it the best way?
Yes, absolutely. As a married woman, I would want to hear this from my husband if this was the situation. Darling, I love you very much. I hope you know how much I love you. However, there are a couple of things that I really need to talk with you about. And because there are children and because there's work and because there are a million things going on, can we set aside a time later today where we can talk about some of these issues? And of course, you may have some things also that you may want to talk about with me. And I think that setting a time and setting a place, especially in our very, very crazy, busy lives, is a wonderful way to set the scene. And of course, she probably has no idea at all, what it is that you are going to be talking about. But at least you have a date. You have a date in place, and hopefully it's going to be today to begin to acknowledge and address and resolve the issues. Because there are many, many reasons, and I think that the listeners should all know about this, that there are many reasons why people actually stop having sex. And we do need to figure this all out. But she really needs to hear you, and she really needs to hear that you love her. I mean, you say that you do, but that you are very upset about the fact that you two really no longer have a viable sex life. And it'll be interesting to hear what she has to say. I mean, do you have any idea at all, other than the fact when we have young children, we're very, very tired and there's a lack of sleep and a lack of energy, and, it can go on and on. But do you have any idea at all why you both actually stopped wanting and actually stopped having sex?
It's a great question. I know that she still loves me and loves our family, and I know that she's not one to open up as much about what she's going through. I know that she's had some difficulty in her own work. I know that she has had certain loss in her own family. Her mother has been sick, various things like that. There's been some financial pressure on her. I welcome. I really think that we could make a breakthrough, and I think there are things that maybe she's been reluctant to tell me about that's holding her back. And I'm rather optimistic once we can get our cards on the table and just open up and have as you say, this open conversation. And I think she would welcome it too.
And I think a lot of women, particularly after that, we've had children, bodies change. So I don't know whether or not she's gained a lot of weight, whether she feels just very self-conscious about her body, because you said that the two of you had a good sex life prior to the arrival of your wonderful children, right?
Yeah, and it just when the children came, especially after the second one, there was just, also with the first one, but there was tremendous time and emotionality put into raising our children, which is understandable. But I think it may have something to do with her own fears of being a good parent, and her own background of what she had to face as a child. Her parents, divorced and so on, and had difficulties. So maybe I guess it gets complicated. I think you're right that getting this out and really finding out what's going on in her mind would be the first step toward this, and to try to understand maybe she's putting so much pressure on herself and needs to get freed up and is not able to let loose and have the sort of fun that we used to have prior to having the kids.
Exactly. One of the things, if we are in whether it's a marriage or whether we're in a relationship of, another kind, one of the worst things that we can do is to assume, because none of us are mind readers, and we can assume all kinds of things and have all kinds of false assumptions about why somebody is doing this or why somebody is not doing that. So that's why it's really, really important to sit down and have a conversation and find out without any assumptions what it is that is going on and in your situation that has gotten in the way of your sex life, where she has withdrawn from you sexually. So that is the first step. Now, I think that if the conversation does not go, and hopefully just having the conversation is going to be great in terms of just being able to talk about really, which has been an elephant in the room, because it's there. It's not just there for you. I'm sure it's been there for her as well. But if the conversation does not seem to be going all that well or leading to some sort of resolution. Now, what would resolution be? Well, why don't we plan some dates? Maybe we can get a babysitter, or maybe even better still, the babysitter can take our two children away for several hours where we can begin to connect with each other sexually. If you find that there isn't a plan in place, a plan of action, not just a plan of talk, would you be willing, and of course you're going to have to check this out with your wife, whether or not the two of you would be willing to get some great professional help?
Well, I can speak for myself. I would certainly be willing to. As I said, I actually went through therapy myself for 2 or 3 years prior to my marriage, and I had a very good experience with that. as I said, my wife is not used to that sort of talking things through, but that doesn't mean that she wouldn't be open to it. I think that with the right therapist, I think that we both could be, it could help us very much in our communication. Because I know also one of our kids has been rather sickly too, for a year or two, and that's been, so there's been a lot of strain, and I think that I think there has been a lot of pressure and strain that needs to be, talked about and worked through. And as I say, I'm looking forward to having that talk with her, and I do think that she would be open to getting some professional help.
Well, one of the things that you've just said, the list of some of the concerns that you have for your wife, you're saying now that one of the children has not been well, right. That there have been financial concerns, that there have been professional concerns, that everybody, of course, with young children, we're all very, very tired. So that there is a long list of things that would explain, perhaps they're not the causes, but that they are contributing certainly to the fact that she has not been interested in sex. I guess I wonder, if a mother is having to deal and if parents are having to deal with a child that's sick, I mean, it's very easy to be depressed and scared and anxious and worried. And when you're feeling depressed and scared and anxious and worried and tired and you're worried about money, the last thing that you're going to be thinking about is sex. So it may be also, over and above the physical relationship, it may be that your wife, may welcome an opportunity, first of all, to be talking about, all of these different things with you. And of course, getting some professional help, good professional help, is always a good idea. Of course, assuming you find a great professional, and as you've heard me say over the years, of course, all therapists are not the same. But I think the fact that you are brave enough, and of course, you don't want to wreck up your marriage by having an affair without at least trying to see if the issues can be resolved. And of course, with people who choose to have affairs, I mean, the real question is that can you envision yourself having a double life, living a lie, living a life of deception? I mean, not exactly the greatest way to live one's life.
No. I'm not that way. No, I really couldn't. And that's, made me even more conflicted. I do know that my wife's mother has been sick at the same time. So, and then previously that she was able to help out with, the children and so on. So there's been a lot that's piled on. And no, as I say, we both do have feelings toward each other, but it's getting, you're right. It's time we really need to figure this out and work this out, because it's just not, I'm not willing to go, into a further into a life in a sexless marriage.
Exactly.
So you're right. Something has to.
Your homework, if you've been listening to my show for the last, today is the 330th Ask Beauty show here on the Progressive Radio Network, you know that I give my patients homework after every single session. So even though you're not a patient, are you willing to do my homework?
Sure.
And my homework is to let your wife know today that you would like to have a conversation with her about some important things, that you love her, so the intro is that I love you very much, and I know that things have been crazy and we're busy with the kids and all kinds of other things that are going on in our life, but that, what time would be a good time, later tonight or early tomorrow that we can sit down, because I have some things that I'd like to discuss with you. Are you willing to do that today?
Absolutely. I will do that. I'm going to get get off work in a couple hours, and I will get home, and we will make that date. And I look forward to getting back with you and letting you know how things are progressing. And I appreciate
Excellent. So you can email me, and of course you can call me. You can call me on the show. I think the homework should probably be, that you're going to have this discussion with your wife either today or tomorrow, and that you can call me back on the show next week, and you could give me an update on what happened. So do we have an agreement here?
That sounds wonderful. I really appreciate it. And
okay, great. Thank you, and thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you.
It does. It takes a lot of courage to be able to, reach out to a radio talk show host / psychotherapist, sex therapist who you don't know. But these are exactly the kinds of issues that so many people are dealing with, of course, and so many people are not dealing with. I have another letter that I want to read you in a couple of minutes, but this is apropos what Jason and I were just talking about. I mean, you can talk about the power of positive thinking. You want to have something better. You want to have a great sex life. You want to have a better job. And this is an article. This was an article that was in the style section of the New York Times a couple of days ago. And this article actually occupied 3 pages in the paper. And the headline was The Power of Positive Thinking Reborn. And it talked about, and I'd never heard the term before, manifesting, thinking about achieving material and psychic rewards through sheer force of mind, the power of positive thinking. So I'm reading this and I'm thinking, in my world, in the real life world, we need to do a lot more than have positive thinking about things that we want. So if you recall, there was the book, The Secret, and the greatest secret, it was a popular book. It was published in 2006. It was a self-help book. It talked about, and this is a quote, "You must know what you want is yours from the moment that you ask." Now, I didn't read that book in 2006, but I was pretty familiar at the time what it was about, that you can visualize things, that you can think in the most positive of ways, and that the world will be yours. And I only wish that that was the way things worked out in the real world. And for a lot of us, it was like to believe that you can just close your eyes and wish for a mega mansion or a terrific man or woman, and that having the right crystals can make it happen. Well, for somebody like me who's very pragmatic, that simply doesn't do the trick. I think that positive visualization and hoping and wishing and wanting and desiring and dreaming, I think that all of these things are absolutely great. But dreamers are oftentimes not doers. And the pleasurable act of dreaming, and I think it's great, we can dream, we can want, we can wish, we can hope, but that it can zap our energy to perform the really, really hard work of meeting the challenges in real life. And what does that actually mean? Well, I see in my practice, and as I mentioned to you, my entire practice is on Zoom. I really miss seeing everybody in my office. It was great to be able to have people, come here to my office in New York City and in East Hampton, and people would walk through the door and Cha-Cha, our therapy dog, would welcome everybody. And it was a very different kind of an experience, although, we haven't had any options, and it's working out, to be perfectly honest with you, it's actually working out a little bit better than I had anticipated. And I was never one of these techie people, and I wasn't even sure that I was going to learn how to press the right buttons to get onto Zoom, but it's worked out actually okay. But I hear this all the time. I want a man. I want a new job. I want to lose weight. I want to travel, although none of us are traveling anywhere these days. And of course, my question to my patients is, okay, that's great. It's wonderful. But what are some of the things that you are going to actually have to do to get to where you want to go? You may dream about losing weight. You may dream about really, really getting fit. But if you're not willing to do something about exercise, about your diet, all the wishing and hoping and dreaming is not going to make it happen. So again, I think that it is about prioritizing the things in our life that we want. I hear this from women, and I hear this from men all the time. I want to find somebody to love. So my question, of course, then becomes, okay, it's still in the middle of the virus. It's not like you're going to be able to, go out and socialize in the way that we were used to socializing just almost a year ago. So what are your plans? What are some of the things that you can actually do? Some people are choosing to work with matchmakers. Other people are on a variety of different dating sites. And then we're able to plan together what to do, assuming you decide to go on a dating site, how you are then going to go about assessing who your potential partner or the person who you hope may become your potential partner, assessing who this partner is or is not, given the fact that you may not be able to see them face to face for a period of time. So it is problem, solution, problem, perhaps thinking about the solution, hoping for a solution, dreaming for a solution. But in the final analysis, it's not so much what we think, it's not so much what we want, it's not so much what we dream and what we hope for, and those are things that are all good, all important things, so that we're able to get some clarity about what it is that we want in our life. But then comes the action. Then comes the action plan. And, as I was saying to a patient of mine yesterday, this is where the self-discipline really, really needs to come into play. We can make all kinds of excuses about why we can't change our diet or why we can't exercise. And then we can continue to wish and hope that we're going to get our bodies in better shape, or we're going to get our physical health in a better place than it has been over the past number of years or year. But it is problem, solution, and all I know, my friends, is that when it comes to resolving problems, we need to understand the problems. We can go back and look at how the problems came into being. But then there comes a time, just like with Jason, where we need to make a decision that we are actually going to take some action and do something to begin to resolve the problems that are getting in the way of our relationships, of our life, of our physical health. So, really curious what you all think about that. And I think that positive thinking is a positive thing, but it is insufficient in itself for us to be able to achieve our dreams and our wishes and our goals. I can't even believe this now. I'm looking at the clock. I had another letter. I had many more issues that I actually wanted to talk about with you that are going to have to wait till next week. And I'm hoping that you are going to continue to send me emails. You can also leave me voicemails. The Progressive Radio Network has a voicemail, and that number is 862-800-6805. And you can continue to go to my BeattyCone.com website where you can email me directly with questions. But as you can see, Jason probably is not used to calling radio talk show hosts, and you can overcome the shyness and the reluctance to talk on the radio. So everybody, I really hope that today was another helpful and enlightening show. It'll get you to think about some of your own issues that you may need to acknowledge and address and resolve. And I want to leave you with my 2 weekly, very, very important messages. And of course, the first one is that you need to do everything that you can possibly do to navigate your life in ways that are in your best interest. And that means really loving yourself. And of course, the second thing is that we all need to do a much, 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 much better job in learning to love each other. And of course, it's a new era with a new president, so hopefully it is going to be a much, much, much better year in the next 4 years for all of us. And I end the show, as I do every week, with my really favorite song, and that is What the World Needs Now is Love, Sweet Love. So have a good rest of the day, and I will talk with you next week. Goodbye, everybody. Be well.